My name is Russell Liabunya.
Tell me, like, where you're from.
I'm from Malawi, so it's in the southeastern part of Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, and right next to Mozambique, right under Tanzania.
Is it a big country, smaller country?
It's a small country. It's like 1/3 the size of Montana,
Oh, wow.
but it has a population of 18 million.
18 million.
Unlike Montana, which has like a million only.
And you said it's like a third of Montana?
Yeah, a third the size of
Wow.
Montana. And it's also known as the warm heart of Africa. If you're on Google, then just look up the warm heart of Africa.
Why is that?
They say it's filled with happy people, ever smiling people.
Okay. So I'm sure it's a nice culture to be around.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's smiling, happy.
Definitely, you don't want to be around those kind of people. For tourists and people who just come to travel.
What's tourism like there? Is there a lot of people coming in and out of the country, or?
So we have a lake, a freshwater lake, which is one of the biggest tourist attraction centers. And then we have the Mulanja Mountain, which people come to hike. I think it's one of the biggest mountains too, like from
Really?
Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
Somewhere around the top 10, so it attracts a bunch of people too.
And what's this lake called?
Lake Malawi.
Okay. I think I was trying to look up Malawi a little bit, and so Lake Malawi has like over 500 fish species or like something like that.
Thousands of species.
Thousands.
And then they're protected.
It's protected, so you can't
No,
fish or anything.
Some part of it is protected where
Oh.
you can fish. I think that's the part which has most of the species.
Yeah.
And then we have the basic tilapia, which is more like a national symbol. Like
Really, the
you find it on the
tilapia
money.
is-
You find it on the money.
Tilapia's on the
On
money.
the money, yeah. Like it's that big. It's really nice. And
So
I
is
think
it
everyone who comes to Malawi should try out. It's called chambo.
chambo?
Yeah, should try out our chambo.
A lot of fishermen.
Oh, along the coast of Lake Malawi, yeah.
Okay.
We have a lot of fishermen.
And is it like your country's or let's say the lake is in the middle and then your country wraps around the lake, or is the lake on the border of some other countries?
It's on the right edge of our country.
the right edge. Okay.
So we're a landlocked country. Then we have a lake along it's like a
Oh.
strip. Malawi is a strip.
Okay.
So yeah, we have a lake.
And what is the city that you're living in? What's it called?
I stay in Blantyre. It's a city in Scotland.
A city in Scotland.
Yeah, so one of the what do they
So
call
it's
it?
named in Scotland and it's in
Right,
Malawi,
yeah.
or-
So one of the
okay.
missionaries who came to Malawi, back in the day. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a while. I can't remember the actual dates, but then they named the place Blantyre, based
Really?
on where they're from. So they were from Blantyre in Scotland. So they came and they're like, this place is gonna be Blantyre.
So is there a lot of Scottish people in Malawi?
No, not really. They
Not
established their churches, and then
So they established
with
and
time
they're
they
gone now.
handed them over to the local people. So
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
you won't see most of them right now. But then you can see the structures that they built when they
Yeah.
were there.
So is it ruins of buildings? Are these buildings still being used?
Oh, it's actually still being used. Like one
Really?
church I can remember it's called the St. Michael's.
St. Michael's. Okay.
Yeah, in Blantyre. I think it was built by Sir Henry Henson. It's a cathedral, Michael's.
Is it like the Helena Cathedral or
That's just smaller.
smaller? All right.
It has that crazy architecture. You can tell that, okay, I think
Yeah.
they planned this out, but then it's just
That's
smaller.
awesome.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so...
And it's St. Michael. Okay.
Yeah, so we actually pray in there, till this
Really?
day.
So is there a huge Catholic community in
This
Malawi?
this is actually Presbyterian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's what the Scottish people brought. I'm not really sure if they're Scottish. I might be wrong with that part. But yeah, they built these churches, and then it's actually Presbyterian.
Okay.
Yeah, so they built these churches, and then we have the Catholic on the other side who also built
So is
some
it
churches.
a very Christian country if
The
they
majority,
brought that kind of culture over?
yeah, the majority is Christian,
Okay.
and then Muslim.
Mm.
Most people believe in Malawi, which I was surprised when I came to the side, and
Yeah.
someone would be like, "I don't believe in anything." I'm like, well, okay, it was a bit confusing then. in Malawi, almost everyone believes in something. We have the Christian side, the Muslims, mostly, and then we have a few Hindus
Mm-hmm.
in the Indian community,
Yeah.
and then we have the people who believe in ancestors and the traditional people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so almost everyone will believe in something. It's very rare to find someone who just doesn't believe.
Do you think with these, the mixtures of religions and cultures, is there some conflict with that, or does everyone get along really well?
I think at this point we don't really have that conflict.
Yeah.
We live together in our
Mhm.
communities.
Yeah.
Of course, there are times when politics will bring this, what do they call it, nepotism, where they get to only put some people of a certain culture in some positions in the government.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say, so we have many cultures too. Culture, like culture,
cultures.
tribes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we have the tribes that I can remember from the top of my head are like 6 or 5. Like the Ngoni, I'm sure you've heard of Cheka Zulu, the Zulus. So they sort of migrated from South Africa and came into Malawi.
Yeah.
And then they found the Chewa, the Lomwe, the Tumbuka, the Sena. So it's like a group of people with their own language, of people with their own language. So they found these people and sort of fought with them back in the day.
Really?
Yeah, and then they displaced them, and then they moved to the south of the country, and then some are in the north, and then it's like the country is made up of different tribes.
Wow.
And over the years, we just coexist, really.
That's
Like,
awesome.
No one really cares about the wars that happened back in the days.
That's awesome.
But then in such cases of politics, like I'm saying, someone from one tribe may end up being the president,
Uh-huh.
and then just dragging people of his tribe in all the major positions.
Okay.
And then the people of the other tribes are like, okay, so why are you just taking people of your own tribe
Yeah.
and not considering us like you being nepotistic? Like, okay.
That makes sense, yeah.
Those are the only cases where this issue arises of different tribes, but then mostly we just coexist.
That's awesome.
Mm.
Wow. So is there a lot of languages being spoke in Malawi?
Yeah, they're mostly regional. The main language is called Chewa, which were the like original inhabitants of the region of Malawi. So it's called Chewa. And the amazing thing is that you find a variation of Chewa in Zambia and Zimbabwe. At some point, it used to be the Southern Rhodesia. So it was like Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe were one country. So I think they used to interact so much that they have the same language to this day.
Okay.
It's not exactly the same language. They call it Chinyanja in Zambia, and it has another name in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
So it's that kind of language where I can hear what they're saying, and they can hear me, but then it's not exactly
So
the
like
same.
you can understand a little bit, but there's like just some little dialect things. that
Yeah,
you're like,
we can speak to
okay.
each other. We can
Okay.
actually speak. But then there'll be some words we'll be like, huh?
Yeah, so my girlfriend's roommate, she's from Lebanon,
Okay.
and I don't know the exact language, but like we were watching like a YouTube video,
Yeah.
and this guy was speaking in that language from Afghanistan,
Mm-hmm.
and she could understand it, and she's like, I can understand bits and pieces of it. She's
Yeah.
like, but there's like certain dialect things, and like
Exactly,
they
yeah.
changed little bits and pieces of the words,
I think
and
it's that kind
it's
of
all
thing.
the same language, but like
Mhm.
the different regions kind of like turn it into their own.
Exactly.
It's really
like,
cool.
We still listen to Zambian music,
Yeah.
Zimbabwean music. It's that thing that you hear, but then it's hard for you to speak.
Mhm.
But when you speak, they also hear, but then they can't speak exactly like.
Yeah, I got you.
It's
Yeah.
crazy, yeah.
So, what is your first language?
So the national language is Chichewa. The
Okay.
tribe is Chewa, and the language they speak is Chichewa.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So you're sure that everywhere you go, you find people who speak Chichewa in the country. It's like a national language.
That's awesome.
And then the second language is usually, not second per se, but then the other language is usually the language spoken by the tribe. So if you're in the north, they'll speak Chichewa and Tumbuka. If you're in like the far south, they'll speak Chichewa and Sena. If you're along the coast, they'll speak Yao and Chichewa. So Chichewa is everywhere, but then they'll have a second language that you can't really get.
So, how many languages do you know?
I only know Chichewa.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay, so how long have you been speaking English for?
So we have English from preschool in our schools, and that's in private schools only, which is actually an issue that's been raised recently because our public schools don't learn English until they reach somewhere around 5th grade.
Okay.
So they're learning in Chichewa from preschool, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, until 5th grade, while private schools are learning English the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 8th grade, they're expected to write the same exam, which is in English.
Yeah.
So obviously, someone who's been learning English.
The private school kids are
doing
better in it.
They're doing better than the public school kids.
Really?
So,
So were you private school or public school?
I went to a private school.
Okay.
Mm.
So what college are you? So you're here for semester at Carroll?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm an exchange student.
Okay. And what's your college called back home?
It's the Polytechnic, University of Malawi, the Polytechnic. They're in the process of transitioning to a new name. They want to change it to the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences. But then when I enrolled, it was called the University of Malawi, so I'm going to graduate under that name. But then in like 2-3 years to come, all the students will graduate under the new name that's about to be introduced.
Okay. And is that the big school to go to there, or is there multiple colleges that people pick from?
That's a big school that everyone wants to go to. Until recently, they just broke up the main university. We had the University of Malawi, which consisted of about 5 colleges, if not mistaken, off the top of my head. So we had Nzuzu University, which was in the north.
Mm-hmm.
We had Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, which was somewhere in the central. We had Chancellor College, we had the Polytechnic, and the College of Medicine.
Yeah.
Which were all under the University of Malawi. And until 4 or 5 years ago, they're we should break this main body and each of them should be separate on their own.
Okay, yeah.
And that's when they're okay, so we have to rebrand ourselves. We'll no longer be University of Malawi, the Polytechnic. We'll have to be the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences. And the same with the North and the College of Medicine. So it's sort of splitting the main body into many universities.
And what are you studying at the university?
Civil engineering.
Okay. And how come you picked civil engineering?
All right, so we go into college based on our grades. We have a national examination at high school level. We call it Form 4. I don't know what. Do you go by grades here in high school?
Yeah, so we have elementary school, middle school, high school,
and high school.
High school, then to college.
How are the classes?
So there's 9th through 12th grade. And some schools are probably different, but that's what it was at my high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year.
That's right. Yeah, so back home we just go from grade 1 to grade 8. And then when you go into high school, it's Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, Form 4. And then when you're in Form 4, you write your national examinations.
Yeah.
All students in Form 4 across the country write the same exam. And then your grades that you get from that exam are the ones that you use to apply into college. So it can be pretty competitive. And med school requires the best grades from the students for you to be
Yeah, I would think so.
yeah. So I happen to have good grades when I wrote my Form 4 examinations, and automatically in everyone's heads it's okay, he's going to be a doctor. They think once you have good grades then you have to be a doctor because yeah. So I really didn't want to be a doctor. I've never dreamed of being a doctor, and I really wasn't sure about what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to start some career searching, meeting different people and talking to them and seeking for advice. And in the process, that's when I started to learn more about civil engineering, and I just had interest in it, and I was okay, I think I'm going to go for this.
So what specifically about civil engineering interested you?
So I am going to major in structures. Civil engineering in my country is divided into, I'm not sure about if it's everywhere else, structures, transport, and water. So in structures, you're dealing with construction of buildings.
Mm-hmm.
You're designing a building so that it doesn't collapse. How many people are going to be in the building. In transport, you building roads, railways, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And in water, it's more of building dams, irrigation systems, that kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I chose to major in structures.
So it's very similar to like architecture.
Right. So that's one thing that people don't get about civil engineers,
Yeah.
because an architect is the one who draws a building,
Oh,
Who-
and then
who
what
makes
you're
it-
doing is building the building.
who
Okay.
makes it a people space. They have their own theories of what a room should be like. Like, should there be a wall between that side and that side? And they have their own reasons of why they made this a plain space. So they're into the theory of why a building should be laid out in a specific way. Like, should the kitchen be to the left or to the right? They
Yeah.
deal with that. And I know nothing about that. Then after they have drawn down their philosophy and the theories, that's when they come to the engineer and they're like, okay, so this is what we've come up with, and we would like you to build it. And they don't really know how to build. They just come up with the idea of the layout.
Yeah.
Now the civil engineer has to sit down and go like, okay, so how is the roof going to be supported? How do we make sure the roof doesn't fall? Okay, we have to put a support here. And then there's this whole back and forth between the architect and the engineer, because sometimes the architect's design can be built. It's just, it looks good on paper and on the graphic, but then in actual sense it can't be built. So we usually we usually argue with architects, because we go like, okay, we need to put a wall here to support the roof, and they're like, no, if you put a wall, you destroy the whole theory of this. I'm like, okay, so there's that back and forth. But yeah, architects deal with the design,
Yeah.
and we deal with the math of, okay, how much load can this roof support? If it's a multi-story building, how do we make sure that when 100 people on this floor, the building just doesn't collapse?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're
Yeah.
doing all that math.
So you're from Southeast Africa.
Uh-huh.
Now you're spending a semester in
The U.S.
small Helena, Montana, going to Carroll College. How did that process kind of happen? Like, how did you end up in Montana?
Right. So about this time last year, I bumped into some friends. Actually, I wasn't even thinking about the U.S. I was just moving around on my campus, and then I bumped into these two friends of mine who were on campus,
Yeah.
and they were going to the registrar's office. And then I was like, okay, why are you guys going to the registrar's office? Like, we found this scholarship to go to the U.S., and we need our transcripts for us to apply, so we want to collect those from the registrar. I'm like, oh, can I check out the link? So they sent me the link of this scholarship program that was being held by the U.S. Department of State.
Yeah.
And it was an exchange program called the Global U-Grad program, where students go to attend one semester in the U.S. and then return back home after gaining the experience, the U.S. experience. So I applied for it. And basically what you're applying for is to study in the U.S. So you don't really know which college you might be admitted to. They get to align you based on your major. So
Yeah.
since I'm a civil engineering major, I guess they were like Carroll College has civil engineering, so it must be the best place for him. So I applied, got selected, and then they chose Carroll College for me. And I had never heard of Montana before.
Really?
It was my first time hearing of Montana, and I had to go on Google. Like, it's that kind of thing where you're excited that, okay, I've been selected, but then where's Montana? And then you
Yeah.
start looking up Montana.
So, seeing that, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of there's Los Angeles, New York,
Mhm.
and then you hear Helena, Montana.
Uh-huh.
Was that like, was it a little terrifying at first, or was it like, all right, let's do it, let's just go?
Nah, I wasn't terrified at all. I was just excited to go to the U.S. And when I see Helena and Montana, it's the U.S. for me. And it's still more, it's still more advanced than most of my country. Like, when I see the setting of Helena and Montana, I'm like, wow, it's advanced compared to where I'm from.
Yeah.
It's a small city, but then it's better than the city.
What do you mean by like better when you're saying this? Like, is it better roads? Is it better buildings?
Right. Yeah, so it's better roads. I can't really say better buildings, but then they have more buildings compared to the buildings they have home. Yeah, so it's like we have some of the buildings that I see here, like, okay, I've seen this before back home, but then they just have more of those spread over a larger area, while our city is just compact and small, and the roads not that big and wide. And I'm like, oh, this would actually work back home. And from a civil engineering perspective too, I'm like, okay, so at first I was like, for a city to be beautiful, it needs to have skyscrapers and all that. But then now when I actually saw Helen, I was like, this actually works. And
Yeah.
if you only had like, maybe the tallest building in Helena is like 6 stories. It's not that tall. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
But it's still beautiful. It looks good.
Yeah.
If we had that back home, I guess it would still do. We don't need to have like a skyscraper like the Empire State Building for it to be beautiful.
Yeah. So do you have any skyscrapers or anything like that in your town, or
I don't know if I call it a skyscraper.
just a tall building?
It's just a tall building. Yeah, like the building I think of like from the top of my head when you talk about that is we've got this National Bank
Yeah.
in Blantyre. Then we have some 5-star hotels, which are like you can see from far.
Yeah. So is that your plan? You see America and you see kind of how our infrastructure is, and you're gonna go back home, and
Yeah, that
you
was
hope to add
my
that back home.
idea in the main idea of this whole exchange program is for me to experience the US and see what maybe I can contribute back home from what I've experienced here. But then again, for you to contribute, you need resources, which brings the idea of, okay, so what if I have experienced it, but then I don't have the resources to contribute to the country? What happens now? It's that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
And we have a few of them.
Oh
That's
wow,
another
those
one.
are nice. I like how they're all like white.
Yeah, so it's not like we don't have those buildings at all, but then
Yeah.
we could have more of them.
So I'm sure being in the snow and the cold is probably a first for you.
Yeah, I was looking forward to the snow.
Yeah. Does it
It's
snow at
amazing.
all back home? No.
We don't have snow. I hear they had hailstorm. Ever heard of hailstorm?
Yeah.
Yeah, like they had it like about a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So it's a shift from summer into rainy season. We really don't have winter. I don't know if
No
you can call
winter.
it winter. But then we just have like summer, hot season, then just...
So you have a summer and then a hot season is what you said?
It's not called summer, but then
Okay.
they call it hot dry season.
Yeah.
And then we have the hot wet season. And then we have the cool dry season. So the hot dry is closest thing to summer. It's really hot and you have no rain at all. So
Okay.
I would call it summer. And then the wet dry, the hot wet. I don't know. It's those combinations of cool wet, hot dry. Yeah. So the rainy season would be winter, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we just have the rainy season is just a rainy season, but then we have winter where it's just cold and just showering a bit. But then
Yeah. Okay.
we never get snow.
So, how do you feel about it being cold here? Do you like it?
I like it actually.
You really?
Yeah, the snow is not as cold as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I can walk with a shirt only in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day after it snows is when it gets so freezing.
Yeah, like today, it's
Yeah,
really
yeah, like
cold.
after it snowed yesterday.
Yeah.
It gets really cold the next day.
Nice. So what's it like? Because I know you kind of got, it's like a tundra in Helena. You've got the mountains over here, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like some trees and there's some greenery. But what's it like in Malawi?
Actually, that's one thing I had an idea of before I got here. I thought the US was depleted.
Depleted?
Yeah, like that's the impression I get from media when they come, like when the UN, for example, comes to Malawi and is like, you need to preserve your trees. The impression they give is like the US once had trees and now it no longer has because of industrialization and all that.
Really?
So you shouldn't make the same mistake. That's the impression that we get. And everyone is like, there's no nature in the US. Then I get here and there's a bunch of trees. There's deers on campus everywhere. I'm like, what's going on?
The campus deer?
I actually thought you guys don't have wildlife at all. You don't have that much trees. That it's deserted and you have concrete everywhere. That there's no space for trees to grow on. Then it's actually the complete opposite. And you wouldn't see a deer in Malawi. Like
No.
we killed all.
Really?
We hear about it like in the 90s. You'd have the deers come by, but it no longer happens these days. And then we use our main source of like fire is like firewood,
Mm-hmm.
charcoal. So people are
Yeah.
just cutting down trees, and it's a source of income for them because they cut down the trees, they burn the charcoal, and then they sell it. And then the government is coming in and is like, you don't have to burn charcoal anymore. But then they don't have an alternative way of generating income, so they keep cutting down trees.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of campaigns going like, we should plant back our trees and all that.
Yeah.
At the moment,
So there's no wildlife.
we have wildlife in protected areas.
Okay.
Yeah, like
So kinda like-
national parks.
Yeah, like we have national parks. That,
Mhm.
Like I feel like we have a lot of forests and wildlife and everything here, but
Mhm.
then we have like national parks that are like untouched.
Yeah.
Like you got some roads in there, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's where you get to see the zebras, the giraffes,
Okay.
hippos, elephants, and all that. Yeah, those are in the protected areas. Because I wouldn't even imagine coexisting with those animals, because if a lion came into you just have to kill it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I sort of get, but then we have the other animals that are not harmful at all, like the deers, but then still people just kill them if they see one.
So have you gone to Glacier or Yellowstone yet?
I've been to Yellowstone.
How was that?
Oh, it was amazing. From the same idea, saying that I didn't think the U.S. had such wildlife, and to see so many trees in one area, I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
What was your favorite part about Yellowstone?
The geysers, obviously.
The geysers. Did you watch Old Faithful shoot up?
Yeah.
You did?
We waited for it. Yeah, it was about 15 minutes away when we got there, and it actually did. So accurate.
So who'd you go with? Was it with all the other international
Yeah,
students?
so it was a group of all the international students. The bisons. We saw a grizzly right
Right.
after getting there.
You saw a grizzly?
Mhm.
I haven't even seen a grizzly. No.
It was just there sitting on the hill.
Really?
Wow, yeah. And then
That's
there was a
awesome.
bunch of cars packed just.
Man, I'm
just
jealous.
outside.
I'm lucky. You're so lucky.
Yeah, I mean, we just got there like 5 minutes into the park, and there it was.
Wow.
Then there was a bunch of wolves that were trying to take down some elks. and
You
then
saw some wolves too?
We had to wait and just watch them chasing the elk. They never caught it though. Then they were just like surrounding it, like 5 or 6 wolves.
I've never even seen wolves either. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
I've been to Yellowstone 4 or 5 years ago for the first time,
Uh-huh.
and we saw like the bison, the elk. We saw
Yeah.
some of that, but no bears, no wolves.
wolves.
So a little disappointed about that, but
Maybe you should give it another shot.
oh, I'm planning on it.
And Glacier, you've been to Glacier?
Yeah, I've been to Glacier.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
Have you?
I was hoping to go there. I don't know.
I'll show you some pictures. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So you'd pick Glacier over Yellowstone?
yeah.
Yeah.
Glacier is awesome. I've been to the Redwoods too.
Redwoods, what is that?
It's Southern Oregon, California area,
Oh,
and it's
right.
these big trees. Like
Mhm.
this is like half of it, and they just go 100 feet up in the air. Like they're massive.
Oh.
I'll show you a picture of those too.
Mhm.
And we went to the Tetons.
Where is this?
That's below Yellowstone. I've been to Crater Lake too, because I'm from Oregon.
Oh, you from Oregon?
Yeah, and Crater Lake's like 2 hours away, and then this is Crater Lake. This is like the Wizard Cap Island.
So it's just there in the middle of the crater.
Oh yeah, it's just sitting right in the middle. So you said you saw bears and wolves, huh?
Wolves, bears, elks, bisons. And a moose too when we were about to leave.
Oh, you saw a moose too? Yeah. I'd never seen a moose
Mm-hmm.
till I got up here. I was fishing,
Yeah.
and we saw one like out in the distance, and then it ran away.
And that's one thing about the U.S. too, like how you guys have this outdoor life. You hear guys are going fishing. You hear they're going. I don't know, all those things that you'd think are primitive, honestly. In the mindset of where I'm from, you'd be like, okay, no one goes fishing,
Really?
no one goes hunting, and then to come to the U.S. and to hear guys, a bunch of guys be like, we're going hunting this weekend. Like, okay, what? It never happens back home. It's that kind of thing that people used to do back in the days when they had to go look for food and then they'd just go hunting. It no longer happens.
So no one, like, even with that huge lake, no one's going out there just going fishing for the day for
Just
fun?
going fishing. I really haven't.
No.
I once had an uncle who had the fishing rod.
Yeah.
I could find the fishing rod at his place. And I really never never saw him go fishing. It's like it just stayed there.
So when you said people will go fishing there, is it mainly tourist? Is it commercial?
No, people who go fishing are like people who rely on fishing for their day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
So
it's for like survival. It's for
they take
making money.
You know what a dugout canoe is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they take
a tree and they chip it.
Yeah, that's what they use. They take a dugout canoe, and then they use. You don't have mosquitoes up here.
We do, but I don't think
it's not a huge issue.
No, not what I've heard about like South America and Africa.
Like,
you guys get these huge freaking mosquitoes.
Yeah, so they're not really huge. They're just
well, that's what they're told to us. Like, these huge mosquitoes.
It's just a bunch of them in the house.
Ours are like this big, and you're sitting outside and you get smack them a couple times. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going inside.
And that's the thing about the like summer. That's when like most of the mosquitoes will get into the house.
Oh really?
I think that's when they breed the most. And during the rainy season, it's like the eggs are just being disturbed.
I'm sure they're just all these puddles are just...
So they can't breed, but then in the summer, it's like they just stagnant water and they keep breeding and they come to the houses. So we have all these projects that distribute nets in the villages, mosquito nets. And these fishermen end up just taking those nets and using them for fishing. So they're just going to take 5 nets and sew this huge net, take it to the lake, and then they just dip it down there and bring some fish. And that's where people buy at the coast when the fishermen are back, and then they just take it to various places in the country. So that's the main like type of fishing that we have. It's for selling the fish. It's not like for leisure or anything like that. It's like they're doing it for the money.
Okay.
And they end up, since they're not using standardized nets, they're using mosquito nets, which are meant to catch mosquitoes. They end up even catching the little fish that is not supposed to be caught. And then there are times when they're like, okay, we're going to deplete all our tilapia in the lake, so you have to stop fishing.
Really?
But then they rely on it for their like day-to-day lives, for the money. So they just sneak behind the officials and still go on the lake, and then they catch the fish still.
So what about you? Like, what are your hobbies? What are you interested in?
Hobbies. Let's see. Playing games. I really like playing games.
What kind of games? Like video games, sports?
Video games. So people don't play FIFA in the US, right?
Some like
it's mostly 2K.
A lot of 2K,
NFL,
Madden.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of Call of Duty.
Yeah, all those kind of games.
Yeah.
And we have people who are like really interested in such games, like where you play as a group. What's the term? I don't know. Yeah, but then we don't have that good internet connection. So it's like we have people who would like to like play games so much, but then the internet is not affordable. Like most people can't afford the internet, so they end up not playing such games and just sticking to the 2-player games like FIFA, 2K. Those
So it's FIFA. That's your game. You love playing FIFA.
I like it, yeah. And that's a game you find everyone playing.
How much FIFA do you think you play?
At this point in time, I haven't been finding time to play as much games as I'd like school coming in and a bunch of stuff to do. So I haven't been playing much of it lately, but then there was a time when I would do it like every day during the holidays.
Okay.
Then I'm into graphic designing.
Graphic designing?
Like t-shirt printing, to be specific.
Yeah.
Like I print t-shirts for them back home. So it's basically creating artwork for the t-shirt, printing it, then selling it.
Is that like your own little small business you've got?
Yep.
And what kind of stuff are you designing?
Man, I try to run away from posters.
Yeah.
Because if you have a client and they're like, okay, we want you to make us a poster, there's going to be a lot of back and forth where you make the poster and it looks good to you, and then you give it to them, they're like, no, I don't think it looks good. And they won't exactly tell you what doesn't look good. So it's a back and forth that, honestly, you can never get to an end. You just reach a point where you're like, okay, we don't have enough time, so I guess we just settle for this. So it's too involving for a very small thing.
Yeah.
Well, with t-shirts, it's just you can print 100 t-shirts with just one artwork.
Yeah.
Like it's not that hard to come up with t-shirt artwork compared to like a poster or a banner, for example.
Yeah.
So I prefer working with t-shirts because the artworks are just minimal, really.
Mm-hmm. So what are the designs you're putting on the t-shirt? What are they looking like?
Right. So someone would be like, I like Dragon Ball Z, for example. I want to have Goku on my t-shirt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I just print out Goku. Like, do you like this picture of Goku? Oh, yeah. And then I'll have to design it and then just print it there. And someone will be like, I just want my name on it. No, I'm trying to gift someone, so I just want their name on it. I want a quote on it. So it's all those sorts of things. Just write this quote on it. Write this verse on it. Write this. It's much easier compared to posters and stuff.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, you get about the same amount for maybe just writing a name compared to like coming up with a banner or a poster.
Yeah.
You charge the same amount. So
Really?
and writing a name is just like typing in like 10 seconds.
So back to the FIFA, is that like you and your friends or just staying up all night playing video
it's
games or?
When a bunch of guys come together and there's a console, they're just going to be switching. They can have a tournament there, right there.
Okay.
Just playing games.
Why FIFA? Is soccer huge?
Soccer is a huge thing back home. Like, very huge thing. That people are constantly arguing about. And if I go on my WhatsApp right now, I'm sure I'm going to find a silly argument about soccer.
Is there a national team that you guys are really into, or is it?
Oh, yeah. Look, right there.
Oh.
Like, soccer has to be there.
That's funny.
Yeah, so Liverpool just won yesterday. Today, actually. Yeah. Yeah, it's a big thing. Like, everyone is posting about soccer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you play soccer growing up, or?
You've grown up in the U.S., right?
Did you play soccer?
Yeah, it's that kind of thing where I was about to ask, like in the U.S., do you guys like play American football in the streets or in the parks? Are you more likely to find an American football that people are just throwing around?
I mean, you'll see people like maybe like throwing the football with each other.
Yeah.
But I don't know about like full on games. Like there's like Thanksgiving here is a big time when people do like turkey bowls.
Okay.
So like Thanksgiving turkey, it's like the thing in the turkey bowl is like a bunch of people go together and play like 2-hand touch football or like flag football.
Right.
And that's a big thing, but like I would say basketball is a big sport for people going out and like going to the park and playing. Like there's a huge like street culture behind basketball.
Yeah, yeah.
So like that's a really big thing.
So back home it's soccer. Like everyone plays soccer at some point in their lives. Because it's always there. You go in the streets, you find a ball made out of papers and kids are just playing around with it. So everyone gets to play soccer. But then I never played it like on a serious level.
Okay.
It's just for fun. Maybe I've knocked off from school and I'm just home with my friends and we go in the streets to play. I didn't really play in my high school or I like basketball too, like as a hobby.
Is basketball big back home too, or just personally you like playing basketball?
It's becoming a thing.
Okay.
It is becoming a thing. Like we have more courts now that you can find just in random areas. Compared to back in the day when you'd only find maybe a court at one place in the city.
Okay. So basketball is growing too.
Yeah, I think it's the influence of media, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to watch TV and you see a bunch of guys playing basketball and it looks cool.
I definitely feel like basketball, like, I definitely know that soccer is global. Like, that's the world sport. But, like, in the United States, it's not as big.
It's not as big, yeah.
It's interesting. Like, every other country in the world, like, soccer is huge. But here it's kind of like,
Yeah.
Like, soccer is a big deal, but, like, I'd say, like, American football or basketball are, like, huge deals here. Like, people love those sports. I mean, definitely football.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
football.
There's college athletes. I play college football.
Oh, you played football?
Yeah, I play football.
Oh, right.
And, like, you see, like, some of these big schools, like Alabama.
You still play right now?
Yeah, I play.
Carol?
Yeah, I play
Ooh,
Carol.
right.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like basketball's growing to be one of those sports that like is very similar to soccer because it's like you see in soccer in like South America and like Africa and like
Europe.
you can get what you said, a paper ball or
Paper ball,
whatever,
yes,
and you play in the street. Like it's a very creative sport, and I think basketball is the same way. Like it's very creative. You can go in the street and play, and it's just kind of one of those sports where football is like you kind of need to have a team.
A certain you need a specific setting for it to work.
Yeah, and it's a very violent sport. I mean, I don't know. Have you watched any of the Carroll football games?
Oh yeah, I've been there. Homecoming also.
Yeah, and
first game.
these dudes are just smacking each other. Like it's violent, full speed hits all the time. So tell me about your time at Carroll. How's it been?
It's been amazing. Like the people have been very friendly. Like so welcoming. Everyone is greeting everyone. And back home, the whole COVID issue was being taken seriously. Like everyone is wearing masks and all that. And then I just get in the US at the airport and no one is wearing a mask. And then I get here at Caro and back home, I don't think people touch anymore.
Really?
Like you can't greet by hand anymore. It's that sort of awkward thing. Like, okay, why are you touching me? But then here it's like everyone is like, bring the handshake.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So at first I was like, oh man, what's happening? Like, people still greet out here.
Yeah.
But then everyone is doing it like, hi, my name is. Like, oh wow, okay.
I think there was a lot of, I wouldn't say conflict, but disagreements.
Yeah, and
when
I
it
feel
came
like
to COVID in the United States, like some people were like you're saying, masked up, don't touch me, and some people are like, I don't care, type of thing. Like there was a lot of different sides. There's people in the middle. There's people outliers. It was a very interesting time.
Back home, it's like you don't have an option to to go against what the government is saying. COVID is here. Everybody mask up. You have no choice. You have to mask up.
Would you prefer to have that choice to not wear the mask if you don't want to, or?
Nah, I mean, yeah, I prefer having the choice. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the whole issue with COVID wasn't. I didn't really get to understand it fully. Like, I knew how it was transmitted, but then I experienced cases where people were in the same room, and someone had COVID in there, and the rest didn't.
Yeah.
Which made you think like, okay, so how does it work exactly? And then to force such kind of people to like act in a certain way, is it justifiable? Because some people have a strong immune system and all that. I think it's basically up to the person.
Yeah.
And some people had like old people back in their homes, and those would mask up for the sake of maybe their parents or grandparents.
Yeah.
But then there's people who just stay alone. So should you force them to mask up too? So I feel like it should have been an option. And it made me realize how the U.S. is the freedom of the U.S. maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, where everybody gets to decide and all that.
And do you feel like your country doesn't let you have some of that freedom sometimes? Or how would you kind of explain that?
We're a democracy at this point, so, but I still think they get to decide the extent of your freedom.
They do? Your country?
At some
like
point.
The government does?
Yeah, at some point they get to dictate how far that freedom can go. And if they have interest in a specific thing, they won't let you have that much freedom. But if they don't have interest in another thing, even if you break the laws there, they don't really care. Like, so if they have interest in this part.
So it's like the government back home was really invested in COVID, so they were very invested in making sure like you stayed inside.
Yeah, you do.
Other
things they actually tried locking down the country, which happened in South Africa.
Really?
But then...
But other things are like kind of hands off, like do whatever you want?
People demonstrated against that. Like they had the army go in the streets, and then there was a whole commotion.
That was
people had
during COVID? Like the army was in the streets? And...
Yeah, like we had this... I can't call it a city. The city is Blantyre, but then we have an area inside Blantyre called Ndirande. Yeah. So people who stay there are mostly people who do like piece work. Yeah. They just make money for the day. Yeah, yeah. And then the government was like, so it's one of the most densely populated areas too. And then the government was like, you know what? no one should go out of their houses.
So they
from
brought
tomorrow.
they
So you're telling someone who makes money per day, like the money they make is for that day, and you
Yeah.
tell them not to go out of their houses.
so they had military
So the military-
intervention.
The people were like, "No, we'll not comply. We're going out tomorrow." And then they wake up in the morning, and the military is all over in the streets.
And the military was forcing people back in their homes. And
So there was that sort of commotion where people
wow.
were against it.
So, let's say someone said, "I don't care. I'm gonna go outside anyways." What would have happened? Were they arrested? Were they shot at?
They weren't short, but then there was that commotion where people were like maybe beat or whipped or something.
It was more of just like they were beat and whipped if they went outside.
There was that kind of commotion. What happened where people were beaten, they were stones thrown at the soldiers and all that. And then at the end of the day, they just gave up and then they
Wow.
left.
That's wow.
And it's
That's
like
insane.
that kind of thing where if I go to a government, there was a point when if I went to a government institution and I had no mask, they wouldn't help you.
Really.
Yeah, so it's that kind of thing where I'm questioning, okay, at what point do I have freedom to do whatever I want? And then there's that whole argument, it's like, if your freedom hurts someone else, it's not freedom anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
there was a whole controversy around the issue.
Wow.
It questions the idea of democracy.
Wow. I'm really glad you brought that up because, like, yeah, I hear about the United States and, like, a lot of people in the United States are like, oh, the government's trying to force us to do certain things.
Would that happen? Like, not being helped because...
There was nothing like that happened. So
Yeah.
it's like, it makes me realize, like, wow, like, the extent of, like, the privilege that, like,
And then the...
people want to say that there's no freedom and stuff in the country, but then, like, hearing a story like that is like, wow, like,
The idea that
very fortunate.
we're told back home is like, in the U.S., people are doing this.
Wow.
So it's like we look up to the U.S. obviously.
Yeah.
They're out there, and then once they say if the U.S. is doing this, what more about you? And then everybody starts like to start thinking like, okay, yeah, so maybe we should also comply, that kind of thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then I actually come here and I find no one is wearing a mask, and I actually came with masks when I was coming from home.
Really?
Like, oh yeah,
So, like,
the U.S. is strict.
We still had, like, people were wearing masks and, like, the beginning of everything, people were staying inside, all that. And then, like, slowly over time, some of the stuff lifted. Some people were like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Was it forced?
I wouldn't say forced, but, like, there was definitely some people were looking down on others, like saying you're killing people if you don't wear a mask, if you don't get vaccinated.
Would it reach
stuff
the
like
extent
this.
of being beaten?
What?
The extent of being beaten or something? But
No, nothing
that
like
wouldn't
that.
happen.
Nothing like that. Like, maybe you can't come into our store, you can't come into our restaurant without throwing on a mask on first.
Yeah.
Like, that was, personally for me, like, that's the extent I saw. I never saw, like, people getting beaten about it or...
It wasn't as bad as it sounds, but actually, it's just an instance where that commotion happened, where they were about to lock down the area, and then people just came out against the law enforcers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the only instance with it. The other times would be you're about to go in a bank, and they tell you, no, you can't be helped in the bank. And you're like, I don't have a mask. Yeah, so come back when you have a mask, that kind of thing.
See, like, here, if you didn't have a mask, most places would be like, do you need a mask? And you'd be like, yeah, sure. They hand you your mask, you put it on, and then you do business. They didn't sell it to you. It was free.
It actually became a business.
Really? Selling, like, having to sell a mask? I mean, there's a business here, like, the custom mask and stuff like that.
Like, the security guard in such institutions would start a business of selling masks. So that they know that people will definitely forget masks and stuff. They'll tell you, if you want one, you have to buy it.
Wow.
And
how much were you buying a mask for if you forgot it?
I could say 10 cents.
10 cents?
Mm-hmm. That's a dime? Is that a dime?
Yeah, that's a dime.
All right, yeah, I'm getting used to the pennies, dimes.
Yeah.
Nico.
That's wild, though.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Whoop. Yeah, that was nice. Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.